right. Welcome to What the Fuck Do You Do? Season 3. We're going to have a really special guest later. Product manager. Boys, how we feeling today?
Feeling pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Pretty good. Pretty good. It's not a great way to say shape.
Pretty good.
I felt better. I mean, we had steins of beer for the first time in months.
Yeah, the funny part is we didn't ask for them, but we did receive them.
We got profiled last night is what we did.
4 guys sit down at a beer bar, 2 of whom aren't drinking, 2 of whom only want 1 glass of beer, and are handed multiple steins for fun.
We were trying to be super responsible, and we got profiled. Like, these guys will take this down.
Yeah.
You could have sent it back.
We tried.
You can't send back a gift.
You can.
Have you ever sent back a gift?
Well,
You
not from
definitely
someone
have.
who's given it to me personally, but from a restaurant or something. Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
Wait, like a chef has given you some food and you've
You're
sent
like-
it back?
You're like, I don't like
First
peanuts.
of all, when the chef does that, that's very different from when like they just pour you a beer and give it to you.
Are you saying bartenders aren't skilled?
I'm saying bartenders aren't chefs.
Whoa.
Is that controversial?
They're the chefs of drinking.
I think there's a skill set with bartending for sure, but they're not the same as chefs.
I don't know about that.
That's why they're 2 different words.
I'm still stuck on the fact that you send
Yeah.
food back.
Can we get into that?
If you order something and they get it wrong,
No.
That's not what
That's
we're
not a
talking
gift.
about.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about someone you've had your meal, delightful experience, hopefully. Someone sends you something like, "Hey, from the kitchen." You're sending it back?
I think in the kitchen, I don't think I've ever done that. But if someone's giving me a drink, I'm like, I don't want this.
Like if someone sends you a drink, if let's say a mysterious admirer sends you a drink.
It's actually a good idea not to drink it because
Yeah.
it might
Well,
be
that's
drugged.
yeah, that is a good point. And also, like, you're not drinking, so it's a good idea not
Exactly,
to drink.
yeah.
Drink.
It's true. I
You know-
said that and then
Yeah.
I was like, no, this ain't it.
Yeah, so this is the wrong audience. But I don't, like, have you ever returned a gift from somebody and gotten caught?
No, I haven't. I've kept the gifts I think that everyone's ever given to me.
Really?
Pretty much, yeah.
There's no way you've kept all of the gifts.
I think, well, some of them might have broken, so
Okay.
I like got rid of them.
But nobody's like gotten you like a shirt that you didn't like and you gave it to Goodwill.
I don't think anyone's ever given me a shirt as a gift.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Or like maybe like family members did when I was growing up, but then I just outgrew it.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've actually received a gift where I'm like, ugh, this is a terrible gift.
You're just a better person than me.
Where does like gift receiving and giving rank on your like love languages? Is it high
It's low.
on
Really?
both accounts?
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, no, I would give gifts if someone that was their love language. Yeah.
If someone liked to receive gifts, you would.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't.
If someone
care.
gives you something, you'll send it back.
so you're a good sugar daddy. You were
Sure.
you were looking for somebody to give gifts to, is what I'm hearing here.
Sure, I guess
I'll
so.
update your
We're,
Hinge
we're,
profile.
we're taking a lot of things out of context here.
That's the fun part.
Did I ever tell you guys about? I went on a date with this girl and she was like, "What are your love languages?" It was a very like out of blue
It's
question.
a reasonable question.
Um,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like we were kind of talking about it. She was just like, "What are your love languages?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, well, I like quality time and words of affirmation."
Oh.
And I was like, "What are yours?" She's like, "I don't like quality time. I don't like words of affirmation. I don't like gifts. What were the other 2?
Acts of service.
And what was the other one?
Words of affirmation, acts of service,
Quality time.
quality time. Oh,
Gift.
touch.
Touch. She was like, I don't like being touched. I like acts of service. I want a boyfriend who just kind of does shit for me."
She wants like a house husband.
Or an intern.
Yeah.
And I was like, what am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah, she's really limiting the options for
Yeah.
you up front. I mean, fair enough for her. She knows what she wants.
Sure, I guess.
And it's not you.
Yeah. Just want me to be your butler?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, I think mine is quality time for sure.
Yeah, quality time says a lot.
Yeah.
What's yours, Justin?
100% quality time.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at giving gifts. Giving gifts gives me anxiety just because
Yeah.
I don't want to give someone a gift to know they don't like it, but them to like pull a Shrey and pretend that they like it.
Yes.
I have never said that.
I feel like that's what you just described.
Yeah, pulling a stray. Man.
No, I just
Everybody
said that
knows what
I've
that
never
is.
had to give a gift back.
No, you keep the gifts. You're just like, now
Yeah, it's like that piece of jewelry you never wear except for when you.
it's like the Bose speaker you tried to pawn off on me right before we started recording.
I bought that myself, not a gift. And I've been using it for like the last 10 years, so.
Oh, Shannon
Shannon's
in
here.
the house.
Well, we got a really good guest here. We're really excited to interview you, but yeah.
Kick it to the interview.
Yeah. Ready, break.
Welcome to What the Fuck Do You Do? Season 3. We got a really awesome guest here. She's a product lead at YouTube here in New York City. Shannon, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be on this podcast.
Yeah. So, product lead, product manager, I feel like they're super high demand, well respected titles in the tech industry. But what the fuck does a product lead do?
Great question. So I feel like product management has recently become very trendy in the last couple of years in the tech industry. And so I remember when I was in college, it was like not really cool to like do tech. I did information systems and marketing, and people were like, do finance, go to banking, or, you know, join an accounting Big Four company. But essentially what product managers do, and what I love about product management, is you're basically the jack of all trades, master of none. So your goal is to understand all elements of the role. So you have to work with sales, marketing, engineering teams, legal teams, UX teams to really like build your product. You're kind of like the mini CEO of that product, and your goal is to get it launched. And so you have to make sure you're tracking analytics. You have to make sure you're like understanding like what the customer journey is, who the users are, what the revenue forecast might be, if there's any legal risks or policy risks. So you're really kind of trying to know a little bit about everything, but you're not necessarily the expert. It's a lot about influencing without a lot of authority, because you're not necessarily the manager of these people, but you are responsible for making sure the product launches within the market.
I want to start there because I know nothing about being a product lead, product manager, anything. When you're talking about products on YouTube, are we talking about like you making the website? Like, what is a product in the YouTube sense?
Yeah, great question. So I work on a product called YouTube Premium. It's a subscription product. Users pay like $13 a month to get YouTube without any ads. You also get access to YouTube Music. So what we basically do is we build that product. So like the landing page for that product, how does the revenue work for that product? How do you pay creators? How do you make sure you get money from viewers? Like basically it's kind of the whole product in itself. So there's like a clear software component. So, you know, when someone subscribes on YouTube Premium, like what happens? How does the rev share work for users? What does the landing page look like? How do you market it? It's kind of all like basically that flow.
That's a lot.
Yeah, where do you start? Like, when did you start this role?
Yeah, so I started at the end of June. So I think I've been in this role for like 8 or 9 months. Yeah, but I started product management basically after when I was starting at Amazon. So I knew that I wanted to be in tech, but also have like a creator e-commerce element about it, because I was really interested in that space.
What got you interested in that originally?
Yeah, so I think what gets me interested is because I've always been fairly entrepreneurial. So what's really interesting about working at a place like Google or YouTube are that a lot of people who come to work at these companies like are basically old founders. So that maybe they sold their company to Google and they're just like, hey, I don't really need to work for money. I just like want to like build products. And so I'm here, but you know, my other co-founders retired. And so that's what I really like about it. You kind of basically get to be an entrepreneur because you're kind of owning the entire process. But like if you work for a big tech company, you definitely get the added value of making sure that, you know, you're not paying people, you like get a salary, you get benefits, things like that. But I think that's why I really like product management, just because you can basically know a little bit about everything, but also be responsible for making sure that product comes to life.
So that's a wide skill set that you have to own. How does someone get into this?
Yeah, great question. So there's like a couple tracks. I think what I've seen specifically at Google is that a lot of people study computer science at like a 4-year university, and then they become engineer for a few years, and then they transition to product. Because a lot of the times at bigger companies, product requires a technical understanding of the code. How does the architecture work? How does data work? And so that's like a key component. But also, I think that there's a lot of ways that people can do it. Like myself personally, I didn't study computer science in college. I studied information systems and marketing. I was actually a buyer at Amazon Fashion when I first started like working. And so within that, I basically was, buying across Amazon Fashion, but I was also interested in like, building cool stuff related to fashion. And that's kind of how I got started, by basically having my normal role within Amazon as a buyer, but also like developing like a digital product within my actual role. So I think there's a lot of ways to start. You can work in marketing, you can work in sales. You just have to make sure you understand some of the technical components and feasibility when launching products.
That's awesome. And so, with all of those different things that you have to manage, the different work streams, departments, like skill sets, what does a day in the life actually feel like when you wake up on a Tuesday or Wednesday as a product lead? Like you mentioned, working with creators, doing shoots, things like that. Is that a typical day?
Yeah, great question. So a day in the life of a product manager. So basically what you're doing is, I guess let's just take like last week. So last week I had a meeting with a really well-known creator on YouTube. I'm trying to understand, like, hey, we're building like a new product on YouTube. Like, here's like my pitch deck. Here's like what I want to build. Here's like how much revenue I think it will drive for you. Here's the customer experience. Here's like the risks that might be within this product. What do you think of it? And so that's like more like a customer call, like understanding if this like creator would be interested in partaking in like a beta or a pilot. That's how a lot of products start. You want to make sure you're understanding and getting customer feedback. And then the next part of my day might be meeting with design to understand, okay, so creator, X said like he wants to participate in the pilot. He's okay with like how we're designing it, but like let's talk about high fidelity designs. Like what do the buttons look like? What should the copy be? How should we market it? Like what kind of social media do we put this on? So that's kind of like, I would say, marketing and design meeting. And then the later half of my day might be meeting with engineers. So how are we actually going to build this? Like, do you want to build it within the existing code we have? Do we want to do a giant kind of like code repository and just kind of redo it and build it from scratch? So I would say it kind of varies. Recently, I've been meeting with a lot of lawyers because I would say like YouTube and Google is like a huge company. So we want to make sure that we're like working with the FTC for influencer policy. We want to make sure that we're working with a lot of these like tax purposes just to make sure that the product is like a safe product and we're within kind of FTC guidelines. So I'd say, yeah, it's kind of a range of people that I usually meet with.
That's wild. Who do you like the most when you're meeting with all those different groups in the day?
Well, sorry to all the lawyers out there, but I meet with so many lawyers and I think they're doing the right thing. They're saying, no, this is too much. Like, there's a lot to lose if you go down this path. But I think that sometimes in product, you want to like innovate, you want to launch fast, you want to work with engineers and just build cool stuff. So I think for me, I love working with engineers because they really want to build stuff. They're just like, how can we move faster on this? Like, what do you need me to ship in the next 2 weeks? So I'd say that's who I like to work with a lot.
Yeah, and I'm curious on that front too. Like, if there's legal telling you one thing, there's engineers telling you like we can do this but not this.
Yeah.
Like sales wants to do everything all at once. Like, how are you managing those conflicting, I guess, opinions of each department when they're not in sync?
Yeah,
is that your job to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So those are called trade-offs in product. So basically, that's a really good example. Like legal might be saying, "Hey, no, we can't do this because of X, Y, and Z reasons," but engineers are like, "Hey, we want to build this." And so a lot of the times I'll make a recommendation based on what I know about all the stakeholders. And what happens at, I guess, specifically YouTube, we'll take it to like our leadership and say, I'll be like, hey, I recommend option 1. Like, maybe we want to launch this. We acknowledge that there's legal risk, but we want to launch this. And we think that we'll get data to understand if we can, make this from a pilot to scale it further. And so a lot of the times I'll basically write a doc or a deck and present it to leadership on this is my recommendation. And then ultimately if they agree on it, we'll do it. If they don't, then we'll go back to the drawing board.
Now, you have such a large scope. When you started this role, are you just tasked with making it better, or were you given specific like goals or like metrics that you have to hit?
Yeah, good question. I would say like this role was a little bit unique. It was kind of like the role that I've been working on is more of a greenfield initiative. So they're kind of like the overall question is problem statement that I'm working on is how do we make more money for creators on YouTube? What kind of alternative monetization product should we launch with them? Who should we work with across YouTube? What kind of creators should we focus on? Obviously, YouTube Shorts is a really big product right now. So I would say that's kind of the problem statement, and then it's up to me to define the metrics. So some metrics might be, YouTube revenue. How much do creators get from YouTube Premium versus YouTube Ads? So those are some of the metrics I might be like tasked with.
Interesting. And I'm curious because I know a couple other people who are product managers at other companies, and they'll say like, I just manage tickets.
Yeah.
So like, how does product manager vary, I guess,
Yeah.
between different companies across the industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it varies broadly. So I've been in product management at Amazon. I've been in product management at a startup, and most recently at YouTube. So I think for smaller or mid-sized companies, a lot of the times people don't know like what product management is. They're like, so what do you do? Like, do you work with engineers? Do you work with sales? And it's like, you're supposed to work with all of those teams to deliver a product. And that's maybe why your friend's like, I manage tickets, because he's just like cutting tickets to engineering teams. Or like, we don't want to do this, or this is too big. I'd say it varies widely. I think for my last role that I was in at a startup, I was basically I was doing a lot of tickets, I would say, but I would say the scope was a little bit more ambiguous. So you might be drafting legal policy, you might be working with a bunch of engineers from different departments because you're staffed, so like small. So I'd say it really varies.
Yeah, okay. So I guess for someone who's trying to get into this role, what are things they should look out for? Because there's such a wide variance, they might have this expectation of, I think product management is this, but it could end up being something totally different.
Totally. You're asking like what should people look out for the role?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think that if you want to be in product management and that's your goal, I think the number one thing is you need to make sure you have a clear engineering team tied to whatever you're building. Because sometimes when you enter a startup or smaller companies, they might have one engineering team, but they might have several product people who's trying to get time from those engineering teams. Your goal is to build products, and if you don't have a core team that you work with, it gets more difficult to build them because you don't have control over an engineering team. Or not control, maybe influence.
Yeah. So then you're going to be like fighting with other product
Yeah,
managers.
you might be fighting with other product managers. It might not be clear what your roles and responsibilities is. So I think that would be the number one thing. And I think for a smaller company too, it's really about the founder. Like, does the founder understand what product does? Is the founder aligned with your vision? Because sometimes you're competing with like, hey, this is what's best for the customer, but the founder might have a different idea. So you have to work closely with the founder to make sure you both are aligned.
I like that. I mean, for me, it sounds really interesting because, you're not in this one niche area. You're not doing the same thing every day, and you're learning about all these new topics all the time. I guess on that point, like, how do you approach learning in a job where you're constantly having to, be an expert in engineering and legal and sales and everything else?
Yeah, I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, I'm not gonna lie. Like when I was interviewing for product interviews, I was just like constantly watching videos on like how to build APIs. I think for me, you have to be very proactive. So, let's use the legal example since that's top of mind. I'm trying to understand like, how does the FTC guidelines work right now? Like, what policy should I making sure I follow to make sure I'm in line with these guidelines? EU is constantly launching new privacy acts because the EU data system cares more, I think, about privacy and consumer data than the US. So making sure up to date on what policies there are, and then also like wanting to understand like how different teams work. Like I just listened to a friend's other podcast, Diane, and I know that, how sales teams are commissioned, like what are they incentivized on? How do you bring them along to make sure that we want to launch, this type of product?
Sounds like a good interview you were listening to. Yeah.
It's a pretty good interview. Someone named Diane Liu.
I wonder who that is.
Wow.
I'm actually very, very curious because you talk about like how being a product lead, you're a jack of all trades, a master of none. You're the CEO of a product, right? You're gonna intersect with a lot of industries that are, for better or for worse, like predominantly what we think of as male industries, right? You think of your tech bros out in Silicon Valley, your engineers. Like, what's that experience been like moving up in your career as a woman in a like dealing with predominantly like male heavy fields?
Yeah, good question. I actually get this question a lot. So I think that it can be hard because a lot of people who tend to study computer science typically are dudes. And like typically people who are in product management come from those really, really technical backgrounds. And I think for me, it's about kind of establishing like a point of view. It's like, I may not come from like a CS degree at some, at Stanford or something, but it's about establishing what your point of view is and kind of like gaining credibility through that. So this is like, I believe that this product should do X, Y, and Z because of all this like data, because of all these things that I've looked at. And I think another way is that I think that the world is becoming more diverse. So like you don't need to fit in a certain box. I feel like I definitely don't at work. A lot of times people think I work in marketing and PR, and I was like, actually I work in product, but thanks. So there's a lot of that bias that you have to go against. But for me, I think it's about earning trust with people and having a strong point of view to be like, I actually understand like how your architecture system works. I understand how this data works, and then gaining respect with your team and engineers and then moving forward. But sometimes it can be hard.
I don't know how you have the time to become such an expert at all of these different
Seriously.
components.
I think it's a constant learning process. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I constantly want to learn about new things, and I think that's why I gravitate towards this type of role.
Yeah, and you had mentioned like kind of, obviously being the CEO of your domain, like of the product that you're leading. Are you on an island in that work, or do you have coaching, like mentorship, team leadership at a higher level that helps you strategize and like point your own priorities forward?
Good question. I actually think that sometimes being in product is really lonely. I remember I used to envy like some of my friends who might work in like different roles. They have like teams of like account execs or teams that they work on that they all do similar jobs. I think sometimes it is lonely just because you want to drive something forward, but you work with all these cross-functional teams. And so they might have a different view than you do, but your goal is to convince all of them, but they might not be on your direct team. I think for product, I work on a product-focused team, which means I have other product managers on my team, but we all own very different products, and we report into the same manager. And so it's nice to like lean on them for advice, but it would be something that they might be familiar with, but they wouldn't be familiar with the team, who you're working with, the problem statement, but getting guidance on like, hey, my gut tells me I need to go, direction Y because of all these data points. Like, what do you think? This is how I'm going to pitch it to the execs.
Gotcha.
So I think that's kind of how I'd lean on people on my team, but I would say it's pretty siloed.
Huh. That's tough. Yeah.
I imagine also you have to tell a lot of people no because you get a lot of ideas.
Yes.
And it's like maybe it's the balance of we want to do it all, but we don't have time to do it all.
And I've been the sales guy who like over promises to a customer and the product manager is like, what have you done to my life? Like,
yeah, I think like saying no is like a skill set that because naturally people are people pleasers. You want to say yes, you want to accommodate everyone, but saying no is a good is a good thing to learn and be comfortable with because you want to do what's best for the customer. You want to do what's best for the creator. You want to make sure that you're appealing to their needs and not necessarily agreeing with everybody who might have these great ideas, but they're not completely fleshed out. So I would say it's kind of both. I think I heard this quote the other day around like how do you influence people that aren't within your org? Like why would they listen to you? You're just some product person in a different org. It's kind of like when you have an idea, you want to try to convince the other team it's actually their idea. And then you get them on board because they're like, oh, like we're motivated to build this because like we like this vision that we've kind of thought about. You might have a brainstorming session with that team and try to convince your opinion, but then ultimately make them think that they thought of it, and then you can bring them on board.
sneaky.
Man, this is like psych, like
It's Inception.
yeah.
I mean, like we see this in sales all the time. Like people don't like to be sold to, but they like to buy, right? Yeah. So I totally understand where you're coming from, especially when you have all of these stakeholders who want something different. Like you have to sell. Like it seems like in order to get anything done, you have to stick to your narrative, but sell it so many different ways so that it resonates with all of these different people. I cannot even imagine doing that.
Yes, it's similar to sales in that way.
do these skills like bleed into your personal life? Because I'm hearing like getting better at saying no, managing like lots of different projects, like assuaging everyone's feelings.
Well, I am a little type A, I'm not gonna lie. In my professional life and in my personal life, I think that like I do approach life in that mentality. Like I like to know a little bit about everything. Like I have really weird hobbies. Like I like to do photography, but I like fashion. I play tennis and ski, but I'm not like, I wouldn't say I'm an expert at any of those. I like to scuba dive. I just like know how to do these things, and I think that's how I approach my life. Sometimes I wish I was a little bit better at prioritizing, like, let me just focus on like 2 hobbies. But yeah, I think a little bit it does bleed into my personal life and how I view the world.
Shannon just flexed on us with her badass hobbies.
No, I wish, like, I think it's cool that you guys are like pursuing podcasts. Like, this is your number one thing.
Yeah, we got nothing else going on.
No, I love it.
Have you always been like that? Just loving so many different hobbies?
Yeah, what was childhood Shannon like?
I think a little bit. I think I've just always been interested, whether it's like meeting new people, whether it's like trying to try a bunch of different things, like going to different countries. I have this thing where I like don't like to go to the same city once, and people are like, why? Like, it's normal to like want to go to Paris again or Mexico, and I'm like, nope, gotta go to Tashkent. Like, I'm trying to go to Uzbekistan. Yeah, I think I've always been like this, to be honest. Even as a child, I've just always had like random interests. But I think as I get older, I gotta learn how to stack rank things as a product manager would
Learn how
do.
to say no.
Yeah.
We're not going to Paris.
Yeah.
Are most product leads, product managers type A?
I think there's a flux. My fiance Drew is in product, and I think he's definitely more type B personality. He listens a lot more to his stakeholders. Not that I don't listen to my stakeholders, but I think he comes in with a softer point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say it varies. I've seen a lot of personality types where they are very type A, and I've seen a lot who are not.
So if he's type A and type B and you both manage products all day, like how do y'all get stuff done around the house? Like, do you project manage each other? Or like,
are you stack ranking like dishes to cook in the night? Yeah.
Well, we are planning a wedding, and so we did make a Excel spreadsheet of probability of people attending based on location, importance, and like how long we've known them, and assign them a number. So I guess maybe that is an
That's
element.
honestly genius.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Because I hear from people planning weddings all the time. They're like, I have no idea how many of these like 180 people are actually going to show up. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if my budget's like 10,000 or 50,000.
Exactly.
Or whatever it is.
So you gotta come up with a ratio, come up with some fields, and be like, I'm gonna assign them like 50% of showing up. And be like,
So Uzbekistan, you're like, there's 1% for everybody.
no, I just really want to go there.
Yeah.
Just to sign out. You guys check it out.
I'm interested in understanding like the work-life balance of being like a product lead, because like you talk about having to deal with so many different people, having to become an expert in so many of these different topics. Like, what is the work-life balance of being a product lead? Is there any?
And I guess on top of that, like you said, you were in meetings all day. So like, when do you get your work done?
Good question. Yeah, so I'll take the first question and the second question a little bit together. So I think work-life balance, to me, I think it's about work-life harmony. I hate saying that, but I think it's about, like, do you like what you do, and does it drive value? Does it drive purpose? Do you feel like you're impactful? I think for me, like, I've honestly never really worked at a company that has had great work-life balance, but I think in my stage of life, I've been more okay with that. You know, I think as I get older, that might change. But I think work-life balance for me, it means that, hey, you know, maybe I have an appointment in the afternoon, so I'm not going to write that doc in the afternoon. I'll write it on the weekend. I just need to make sure that I'm going to a lot of these meetings with stakeholders and then making decisions. But also, you know, we convey a lot of information through doc writing and PowerPoint slides. So I think that's one way. I think you asked a little bit about like, what does that like look like? How do you mitigate against that? I think for me, I work East and West Coast hours a little bit in my role, so I might be able to start work at 9 or 10, and then I might have meetings until 7 because my teams are on the West Coast. A lot of my engineering teams are on the West Coast, so that means that if I need to write a doc that morning, I'll work from like 7 to 10 and like just have focused time because 10 a.m. is only 7 p.m. or 7 a.m. on the West Coast. So I'll have focused time without people pinging me, without being in meetings. So I try to carve out time to think and kind of like write docs or create PowerPoint slides, things like that.
Generally speaking, are West Coast workers like? Do you manage them differently than East Coast workers? Like, what's the difference? Because, like you said, like you came from Seattle, you live out here in New York now.
Yeah.
Like, what's the difference in the average, tech worker?
I would say that people on the West Coast are probably a little bit more chill in the sense that they want to come to the office earlier. They may want to have a meeting at 8, but they want to be done by like 4 or 5, maybe like 5 usually. And then I think on the East Coast, people want to start later, but they go until later because you might not have dinner with your friend until 8:30 or 9. So I'd say that's different. But because I've mostly worked in tech, I would say that, and mostly worked at companies that are a little bit more intense, like an Amazon, that people generally work a lot. But I think it's more about like the hours would be different. I wouldn't say like people on the West Coast are like lazy or anything. Like,
Hot take. Hot on the presses.
I'm gonna clip that up.
Shannon hates the California workforce.
No. I think that it's just a different. It might be just a different mentality. It also depends on the company and things like that, and like what their value, what each company values. I think for Google, actually, a big proponent of Google is they really want to make sure that you feel psychologically safe, and they actually really prioritize work-life balance. I just think it can be team specific. My team, for example, is a great team, but we just probably work a little bit more than maybe the average Google team.
And so of all the stakeholders you've mentioned so far, the one that feels the least familiar to me is creators. Like working with these, influencers, marketing geniuses, or content creators that have like created virality for their products and their content on YouTube. What is it like working with creators? Like, how is that different than these other teams? I'm just so curious, like, what that experience is.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved creators. I feel like for a while, people didn't take them seriously. I think maybe like 7 years ago, they were like influencers. It was like, no one cares about your skincare routine, Helen. But people were like, actually kind of do. They kind of make a lot of money.
Like millions of people.
Yeah. So I have always loved it. I guess what it's like, I think it's cool because these people are basically entrepreneurs. They have to figure out how to sell the product. They need to figure out, are they making a product? Is it like a lipstick? Is it like a software product? They have to figure out like how to make sure that they're marketing themselves well. Are they on TikTok? Are they on Instagram? Are they only on YouTube? They're basically also the jack of all trades. They have to really figure it out for themselves. And so I really enjoy working with them to like understand like what they care about. I think like, bigger creators on whatever platform definitely care more about monetization and like how do I make consistent income, whether it's through sponsorships, through ads, through affiliate programs. And smaller creators might like care about, making sure that their audience is engaged, building up that audience, maybe creating virality on making a TikTok. I think that is a really helpful mechanism for smaller creators.
So, yeah, go for it.
I have a scenario.
Yeah.
Let's say there's a podcast, right? 3 friends chatting about life, learning about people's jobs. Let's say they wanted to be one of these micro-influencers. Like, how would you go about making that happen on YouTube?
Yeah.
Asking for a friend.
Yeah, 3 friends.
Let's say they're really good looking.
Yeah.
They make amazing content.
Yes. I think that group of friends should honestly start on TikTok. I think that TikTok has a really great algorithm where you can become viral quickly. There's actually a lot of studies that have shown this. TikTok is known for their trends, right? So I think if you capitalize on talking about content that's unique to that trend, you will achieve virality within TikTok. I think that once you've established, maybe you're aiming for, 10,000 views per video or whatever your benchmark is, then you should go to YouTube and make sure you're monetizing that. Because TikTok, this might be slightly controversial, but I know that TikTok just doesn't monetize its creators as well. But a platform like YouTube, it's endemic, it's been around for a long time, maybe you can't become viral as fast as you can on TikTok, but then you can point your users there and then you can get more money on YouTube. That's what I would do.
We're going to make some TikToks.
You just
Gotta
plugged
make some
TikTok.
TikTok.
Yeah.
I did plug TikTok. Sorry.
I
I know I
know.
work at YouTube, but TikTok is a great product. I mean, there's a lot of things in the news about it, which maybe I won't go into detail here, but I think ultimately it's a great product. It took off really quickly. They're really good at recognizing trends. They're really good at getting smaller creators to create cool content that becomes viral fast. And I think in this day and age, when so many people are creating content across different platforms, they want to find their audience. And I think you can find it on TikTok, and then you can leverage other platforms to scale or make more money.
We love YouTube Shorts.
Yeah.
Way better than TikTok.
YouTube Shorts is a great product too, but I just know that TikTok is definitely constantly a little bit controversial in the news.
Yeah.
How do you go about innovating? Because you have a very broad scope, right? And you can make decisions based off of numbers or people's ideas, but there may be something new that hasn't been done on the platform. But how do you think about that?
Yeah, great question. So I'm actually thinking about that right now. I think innovation comes in a lot of different ways. I think one, it's understanding what are the trends in the industry. So everyone's talking about ChatGPT and generative AI. How could you build that into an existing product? I think number two, not just understanding trends, but understanding the use case that you're solving for. You don't want to just build something random and cool where it's what's the use case? What's the business value? Are you going to drive revenue? And then third thing, honestly, is I just generally like to work with startups. So in my current role, I'm actually an advisor for Google for Startups. And so what that means is that I basically meet with a startup that I'm assigned to. I listen to their pitch decks, what their OKRs are, what they're solving for. And then I also meet with the other cohorts of startups and listen to their ideas. And I think that's also when you can kind of think oh, that's a unique idea, or kind of get innovation from that category.
So basically immersing yourself with kind of what's happening out there.
Yeah.
From other startups or trends, things like that.
I think that's very important.
That's an awesome place to be in, is because you're hearing all these trends, all these different experiments on the ground level, and then thinking through what could actually work. You got your feelers out for everything, which is cool.
What do you need a college degree to do this job? And I'm very curious also about the interview process.
I would say you need a college degree. I would say probably just your undergrad. I don't think, some people think you need your MBA. I don't think you need that. It helps. I don't think you need it. And then your other question about the interview process. So the interview process for product is honestly terrible. It should be changed. It's really brutal. I have lots of friends that can attest to this, but I think it's just really challenging because you have to know all these, different subject matter areas that they test you on this. So I think for me, understanding product vision and building a product from scratch, understanding the technical component, understanding the financial component when you're making a P&L, these are all types of questions that they could ask you in your product interview. So I think that's really hard. For me personally, the most challenging part I had was the technical part. They would ask you to create an API or build TikTok, or build a short URL. And I think that's why there's so much content out there that's how to ace your product management interviews. And they honestly really help. I think what helped me the most was mock interviewing with other people so they could correct me on what I was doing wrong or what I could do better.
But you're asked in person to do this on a whiteboard, or it's
So for the example for, build the TikTok architecture, you're basically asked this in an interview. And this isn't for every single company. It just happened to be with some of the companies I was interviewing for. It usually tends to stem technical. And so you basically share your screen and you're doing it through a Whimsical, which is a whiteboarding app. And you're just saying, hey, this is how the API call would work. This is where I'd store the data. Maybe I'd store it in S3 because it's an image, and so I know I'm parsing it through S3, and so you'd have to call out all the parts of the system and then show them how it would work, how your request would work.
On the fly?
Yes.
That's wild because so I help software engineers train for their interviews.
Those are
and
brutal.
Yeah, that that level of systems design and on-site coding is what. So basically, you're interviewing to be a marketing, legal, sales, and like full-time software engineer all at once. Like, that's intense.
Yeah, I will say it's not like you're not necessarily coding in the interviews. Like the systems design one is a really common one, but yeah, it is. I have a really good friend who was studying for engineering too at the same time, and I was having her edit my systems design diagrams because she was like, "This is wrong. Like, why are you making this request?" I was like, "I don't know. I just like watched a bunch of YouTube videos. I'm trying."
What are you doing?
Yeah. So I think that's why I said the mock interviews really help because you're kind of just hoping that you practice enough and understand how the systems work. So when they ask you some random question, you're like, all right, I know the principles. Let me try to like put it into effect.
So there's no questions like, what are your strengths?
Tell me about a time that you struggled.
I care too much.
I work too hard. I care too much.
Honestly, the top of mind interviews for me that were the most brutal were Stripe and Google, and they didn't really ask those type of behavioral questions. But I will say, like, companies like Amazon adhere to the STAR principle, those type of questions, and so they will ask you questions like that. And so I think those, for me, I feel like those I have a better handle on, because it's like you can make, a rubric, you can make your examples. But I think for technical ones, you're like, oh God, I just gotta figure out how to solve this.
For someone who's jumping into interviewing, like what is STAR methodology?
Oh, yes. STAR is situation, task, action, response. It's a way to have a framework to answer behavioral interview questions. And I think it's very helpful. So you're making sure you're not rambling, but you have a clear guideline of how you should answer, what's the hardest thing you've had to done, what are trade-offs you've made, questions like that.
Yeah, +1. That's what we teach. It's great.
Is the expectation also that you're supposed to nail the interview? Because it seems like if they make it really, really hard, everyone's going to struggle, right?
Yeah. I think it's like one of those things, like it's a mixture of like preparation and luck.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I have friends that have maybe prepped for a year for their interviews. I prepped for like 6 months and like I got rejected a lot. Like a lot. Like it sucked. But I think you become better at your craft because you're like, oh, I could have done better in this version or this interview because of this. And sometimes they do provide you feedback, but ultimately, like it is very subjective to the interviewer. Maybe you interview in a technical one and it's like a senior development manager and he's looking for you to do something very specific, but you don't know that. So I think it varies. I think at bigger tech companies, they try to make it a little bit more objective. So a lot of the times that 5 people might interview you and then they might all write a doc about you and then they'll take it to almost like a board and then they'll make a hiring decision on you. You're either a yes or a no. They take it to another third party that didn't interview you.
Gladiator.
Yes. It's not great, but that is how they try to add some objectiveness.
Dang.
You said you'd want to change the process if you could. Like, if you were product lead of the interview process, how would you change it?
Yeah. I think, the one thing that I really hated doing is that they would make you do like case studies or like decks or like technical white papers. So some companies would be like, hey, like, we want to launch like a new billing product. Can you figure out what APIs you would use, like what your go-to-market strategy is? How would you sell it? What would your financial model would be? That would take like 30 hours.
That's like a full week in the life. Like, that's a full project.
I would say that is what I would take away. I've interviewed for a lot of places who do that, and I think sometimes that they're trying to source ideas for you, or they're like, let me just put this in the interview process. It's really not fair to the interviewee, because you might be spending hours doing this, and they might just be like, actually, we don't really like you. See ya.
I hate that. I remember like I interviewed for a strategy position like 2 years out of college, and the company basically was like, put together a deck on what this strategy should be. I was like, that's so broad, and then I feel like I'm giving you all these like
your
ideas.
Yeah. And then you're like sweating, and you're like, oh my gosh, is it good enough? Is this right? And you're like freaking out because it's like part of their interviews. You want to do your best work, but then it's super time consuming.
I've always found that weird. It's like, why would I know this? I don't work here.
Right. It's like, I don't want to do free work.
Yeah.
And like, there's also like a lot of bias in the interview process. It's like, if you're bringing someone in from an underrepresented background, like say a working mom or something, and you're like, do a 30-hour project on your side.
Totally.
It's like, you don't have that kind of time to just luxuriously prep for an interview that you might get pushed to the second round for. But yeah, we could go to that more. I'm curious, Shannon, so obviously maybe your whole life will be spent at YouTube, making it the number one product in the world. But for you, like, what does moving forward in your career look like after this? Like you mentioned entrepreneurship and kind of your love for startups and creating. What do you want to do long term?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Something I like to ask myself a lot. I think for me, I definitely see myself at YouTube for a long time. But I think for me, I'm really interested in finding a problem that I want to solve, whether it's building a product, a platform, and I think probably entrepreneurship would be the next route I go. I mean, it's dependent on a lot of things. Obviously, there's a lot of risk, but I think that's definitely what I'm interested in. I think working at a place like Google where I meet a lot of people who have done that, who are like, hey, like, it's nice to work at a place where you're not worrying about payroll or like, you're just responsible for your product area, but you're not responsible for paying people. That's like less stress. But I think that's probably I would say interest and probably next step.
I feel like investors would love that. They're like, oh, it's a product manager who's worked in multiple places. You advise startups. Like, you're going to know exactly how to pitch like, people to give you money.
I don't know. I think it seems glamorous, but I feel like I work with a lot of founders now who work at Google, and they're like, dude, it's brutal. Like, you don't pay yourself for years. Sometimes you're just like just doing HR and payroll stuff. But I think it just depends on like how stubborn you are with like your idea and your vision. But yeah, I agree. It's kind of brutal.
You can start a YouTube channel. You know exactly how it's gonna work.
Can you push the viral button internally?
Well, I feel like you guys should. I'll help you guys out for your thing.
Yeah, tell the engineering team, give these guys a little boost.
Give you guys a little boost.
We didn't spend a whole day in the park filming TikToks not to go viral.
We needed you before we started filming that content for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, what is your goal with What the Fuck Do You Do? What's your long-term vision for your podcast and platform?
Well, we sat down at our annual retreat, actually, at Justin's apartment.
Annual retreat.
We did a little review of kind of season 1 and season 2 and where we wanted to go. And I think the one thing that we all agreed on is that we enjoyed doing this for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
Like we enjoy getting together as a group and having fun and talking to interesting people and learning. And I think like even if we made this for 10 people, it would feel good to do that. Just, like you said, solving a problem that you care about. Like, this is fun. I think, we're at a place where I think we've made really good contents and we have maybe 100, 200, 300 listeners, like depending on the episode. And so I think like the goal for this, at least this year, is like, what if we actually invested in trying to market this and get it to a wider audience and see if there is traction at a larger level?
Yeah.
And then that helps us decide like, oh, is this something we could maybe make money on and should invest more time in? Or is this still a fun side project that we can keep doing just as friends?
Yeah. And what is the key metric you guys are measuring? Like, what do you guys care most about right now?
I think for right now, we've been using listens, views, downloads.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Primarily like Spotify's data dashboard.
Yeah.
YouTube analytics. Like TikTok is interesting because it gets lots of, like Justin does the TikTok, so he can talk more about that. But
TikTok has the most views for sure.
Definitely. But it doesn't necessarily translate to subscribers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah.
I think you guys should make like honestly more controversial content on TikTok. Honestly, that's the stuff that does really well. Like that sounds really weird to say out loud, but I think like sometimes even the weirder and more niche your subject matter was, it does really well because of how their algorithms are designed. And then also just utilizing all those trends.
So as 3 dudes, how are we controversial without getting canceled?
Ask like spicy questions that you would feel uncomfortable answering, but you should prime your candidate to make sure they're comfortable at answering that.
How much cash do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about this generally, but I think that a lot of people in tech, not me, but a lot of people in tech, I think you know this, Travis, because I know that you work at Marcelab, work with a lot of software engineers. You can make a lot of money in tech. I think I have lots of good friends that are, residents or doctors, and unfortunately, whether this is fair or not, a lot of people who don't have a medical degree, don't have their MBA, can make a lot of money, more than doctors, honestly. And that's why I think people want to push, people like Marcia that want to push people into tech because it could create better opportunities for where they're from. Imagine if you're 21, you can make 200K becoming a software engineer, and that only goes up over time.
It's pretty wild. I mean, it's funny. We had all talked about this recently at like dinner or drinks or something, that we were growing up in like 80s, 90s, like our kind of millennial generation. The story from parents was like doctor, lawyer, accountant, stable careers, get your degree, and like every single person I know our age who's like a doctor, lawyer, or accountant is miserable.
Tough.
And they're probably making on par, if not a little less than like tech professionals. And like tech is not a perfect industry. It is like full of bias. It's full of like failed jobs and layoffs and like all these big messes. But I think to your point, you can break into it a lot faster, which is compelling.
Yeah, my dad's a dentist, and he always says it's like wild that you can make that much money and like not be a doctor. Like you can make. I think product management, it ranges, but the range is, anywhere from like 200 to $500,000. If you're a director, directors at FANG companies make $1 million a year on average. Wow. You can see that data on levels, FYI. But I think also people understanding who are young, knowing like how much they can make through different, professions is important. That might be a catalyst for them to, help their family and their community.
Yeah, maybe we just ask people about money more. That's our vibe.
Show us your pay stub.
Yeah.
Wait, I have a question for the group. Do y'all's parents understand what you do for a job? Like the ins and outs of what you actually do?
No.
My mom definitely does not.
Does your dad and mom understand what you do?
I think he kind of does, because he thinks it's like really weird. He was like, so like you do like YouTube? Like I just don't get it, but he really wants to learn.
Right.
So like kind of, I would say, but it's definitely like it's like I have to tell him like all the time, like this is how it works.
Yeah, I was saying like my parents love like the organization I'm a part of. They're like really big fan of Marcy. I don't think they have any idea what happens like 8 to 5 Monday through Friday.
My dad goes extra mile, and he's like trying to give me advice because he thinks he's a salesman. He's like, I'm selling stuff all the time. I'm like, dude, you're literally a doctor. Shut up.
Yeah. That's funny. I think it's because a lot of these roles that I feel like we're all in, it's not as tangible. Like being a doctor is very tangible. Being a lawyer is even more tangible. But like some of these tech types of roles are not, it's like what? Like you work on like technology, but like why do you make that kind of money? But like what are you really doing? Like are you doing anything? Like people are confused.
Yeah, you don't actually produce a physical thing.
Yeah, it's not
like,
as tangible.
You could spend a whole day, like you could have a great day at work and like nobody would see anything.
Yeah. Just like writing docs and people are like, cool.
That part's tough.
Well, I guess this podcast 2.0 is going to feature a lot more controversy.
Yeah.
And we'll either be canceled or we'll make it.
Yeah. I'm excited.
For the video, I'm just going to blur everyone. Just
like do the voice modulators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had actually one last question for the three of you. What are your guys' different roles in this podcast? In this or even like personalities within this space?
I'm the silly one.
We actually did a good job this season of like splitting up the labor. So we all try and schedule guests. I'll do the audio editing. Travis will do the video editing.
Oh, cool.
And Justin will do all the social media.
And then Justin's also like day of producer. So he's doing like the levels on the mics and the recording and stuff like that.
It's a work in progress.
Oh, very cool. Okay, I like it. So you guys all have different like strengths that you basically advise or just do in this project kind of thing.
Strengths
podcast.
is a strong word. We have assignments. But part of it, like to your point of like why, what's our goal for it is like, originally when it was just me and Shrey, it was like, oh, let's learn how to edit a podcast. Let's learn how to record.
Cool.
And then we learned about equipment. Now we know more about videos. Now we're learning about like marketing and virality and stuff. So it has felt like a good just experience in something like totally out of our comfort zone or day-to-days.
I think that's awesome. It's super useful too.
We'll see if we blow up.
We just need this one to go viral.
You guys got to connect with Guy Raz on NPR because I feel like he does a lot of this stuff.
Although NPR just like axed for their podcast yesterday.
Oh, they did? Oh, my bad. I didn't know that. I just listened to How I Built This.
So
maybe you guys can be the next How I Built This.
Yes.
Or they're going to be the next What the Fuck Do You Do?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
We're focused on being the best version of ourselves.
Yeah. But we appreciate you being here, Shannon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And shout out to P&T Knitwear Bookstore and Studio for letting us use the space. Y'all rock.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is so fun.